The Doctor. In the TARDIS. Next stop everywhere.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Skaggs, back in the TARDIS once again, still hiding out from 2020 because bad 2020. But thankfully, I'm joined with my partner in time, Jesse Jackson. How you doing, Jesse?
I am doing great, very great, and I'm excited about our special guest.
Yes, so making his Next Stop Everywhere debut, you know him from our Next Stop Everywhere listener feedback. You know, he's been very loyal about writing in and giving his thoughts and having a lot of great insights. So now we get to hear him. And so please welcome to Next Stop Everywhere, David K. Proctor. Do you prefer David, or do you prefer David K. or Dave, or I want to make sure I want to call people. I like to call people what they like to be called. So
call me Dave. David K. Proctor is the auto signature on my email.
Okay, so you prefer Dave. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, Dave, thank you so much for joining us. We're really glad to have you here, and I hope you have a great time.
Thanks for having me.
So, yeah, here at episode 196, by special request, we're talking Shada. Shada! The unaired serial that was originally planned for season 17 back in 1980. Written by Douglas Adams, one of my probably my all-time favorite author, who wrote the previous stories, The Pirate Planet, City of Death, as David Agnew, part of a trio that used the David Agnew pseudonym. And, of course, most famous for the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy books and the Dirk Gently novels as well, something we're going to talk about a little bit because it kind of relates to Shada a little bit. And this was directed by Pennant Roberts, who directed the original, and then Charles Norton, who directed the 2017 version that at long last, completed the serial using animation and new audio from Tom Baker, Lalla Ward, Daniel Hill, Victoria Burgoyne, and others, and Christopher Neame, that we'll talk more about here shortly. But this is something that is kind of one of those lost treasures of Doctor Who that way back, in the day, because this was never aired, it has a little bit of a meaning to a lot of older fans like myself and probably Dave, that this is something that we thought we might never see completed. And thankfully, with animation and the new audio, we get a chance. So looking forward to talking about this with you, Dave. Jesse, do you have any initial thoughts before I want to talk to Dave a little bit about his Doctor Who fandom?
No, let's run directly to learning all about our special guest companion.
Yes. So, Dave, why don't you, so we know you've talked a little bit about your fandom in your letters to us, which we definitely appreciate. So I'm kind of wondering, I'm guessing since you're wearing a Tom Baker hat and Tom Baker scarf, that I'm guessing Tom Baker is your doctor. Would I be safe in that assumption?
If you define that as the doctor that got me hooked, yes, he's the one.
I understand. He is for a lot of people, especially older fans like you and me. So what was it about Tom Baker that appealed to you when you first started watching Doctor Who?
I had a buddy who was into Doctor Who, and I went over to his house one day and he had it on TV and I'd never seen it. And I was like, well, this is fascinating. I was immediately drawn to the fact that the effects were not awesome, but the story was so good that it didn't matter. And it was on PBS. So my assumption was it was made by the college where the PBS station was transmitted from at first.
So you thought it was an amateur production. That's interesting.
At first. And then, I couldn't get it on my own TV. We were only a couple miles apart. And, well, the time of day and so forth didn't work out very often, but it just wouldn't come in. So I would go over to his house just to see it. And we kind of built that. It became something that he and I did that none of the other friends were into. So that kind of cemented it there. And, time goes by when you're a kid and it disappears. And it was always like, where is it? Where is it? Until really 2005. I saw some of the other doctors here and there, 1 or 2 episodes, but then 2005 it came back and I was immediately like, there it is. Let's go get it all.
So you kind of like touch base with doctors here and there. Then, like you said, in 2005, that's when you kind of found your Doctor Who fandom again. Is that accurate?
I always knew it was there. I just couldn't find it anywhere. It was never in the TV guide. You couldn't find it on the internet. I wasn't searching in the right places.
You weren't aware that it was canceled.
I assumed that since I had only seen it back in the Tom Baker days, that it was a show that was just back then, the mid-'80s. And what show lasts 50 years? It couldn't have been. And when I started digging a little deeper, I was like, oh, well, it goes back to 1963, the same weekend that Kennedy was shot. So it's a historical thing. And,
Yeah, the day after Kennedy's assassination, yeah.
Indeed. I've always been one of those guys, if it's different and I can talk about it to other people, I'm going for it. So I dove in with both feet. I have a lot of friends that are Star Trek fans, and I had the attitude that if you think Star Trek guys are geeks, let me one-up you. Let me show you what I'm into. And, I've gotten a few people interested, and hopefully in a good way. My wife's now hooked. So
that's always a plus, trust me.
Absolutely.
On this. So does she watch any of the classic stuff or just the modern era stuff?
She has, I don't think, nostalgia. What's the opposite of nostalgia? Some kid in her neighborhood used to turn it on her TV and she hated it, so she doesn't like it. She doesn't care for it. But who knows? I'll sneak one in here and there. If it's always on, it'll seep into her world, right?
There you go.
So you're hoping for osmosis, essentially. Okay.
It's the best I can do.
Jesse, you have any questions for Dave?
No. I'm very excited to meet Dave virtually.
Now, you guys had tried to do this on Set Listing Bruce, as I understand the story.
Yes, we had a wonderful discussion, a little bit over an hour on Monday the week that we're recording this, and Skype recorder did not work, so we're going to reset in a couple weeks, and we're going to take that as a dress rehearsal. But Charles, the awkwardness of this is you've already talked about everything.
Right.
So you end up having a different conversation, and despite you trying not to go, well, as I asked you last time,
Well,
so,
sometimes distance, if you give enough a little bit of a distance between those, that tends to help. But sometimes, redoing it, sometimes you have you come up with other things to think about, or stuff your subconscious was working on without you even realizing. So sometimes it turns out better.
Maybe he can steer his guest away from some things.
No. Is 3 the most we've had to do? I think, Charles.
I think so. I think 3. I don't want to think about any more than that.
No, exactly. Moving on. So yes.
So modern era. So Dave, before we get diving into more about Shada, do you have a favorite doctor from the modern era?
That's really hard to put a finger on.
Or you just like them all equally?
Well, not equally, but I like them all for different reasons. I really like Eccleston because I haven't seen it in so long, and it's like it must be how the explorers were when they finally saw land. They were like, "Oh, it's back! I can walk on land." And then Tennant was awesome and so prolific. He has more stuff, and then Matt Smith I wasn't so into, but I loved Rory and
Amy.
And I'm certain. Oh, there's my dog. Sorry. My wife just came in. And
That's okay. It would be your dog or Jesse's dog, so, you know.
Capaldi, I absolutely adored. And Jodie's good. My wife is back into it because of Jodie. So.
Oh, that's great.
There we go.
That's great. So that's good to know. All right. So as we kind of segue into our Shada discussion, Dave, what was it about Shada that interested you so much that you're like, I want to talk about this on Next Stop Everywhere?
Well, you remember me saying how I like to bring things to people and go one step further?
Right.
Well, if you are into Doctor Who, I got one you haven't seen. So the people who I would talk to who were fans have seen them all. I said, well, I know there's one out there that no one has seen, and I read the book, and now I've seen the show, and I own I like the animated, back and forth live animated, right. And so it's just one of those extra deep dig into the geekhood, and I mean that in a good way.
Okay.
I just sit down and geek out on it, and just like, oh, it's awesome.
You kind of consider this one more for the advanced level Doctor Who fan.
It's the Holy Grail. You
okay.
know, you know it. You know it's out there somewhere. Let's go find it. And I found it, and can I hang on to it, kind of thing.
All right, sounds great. And I'm definitely looking forward to talking about it. Jesse, I hope you're looking forward to talking about Shada.
I am, though. I may be the Russian judge on the discussion
again.
No. I wonder, and I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Is part of the allure that it was so unknown for so long, and and that if it had just been a regular episode that happened right away, it would have been, it was a good episode, but not necessarily a classic top one of the ones.
Right.
But because of the circumstances, and you think you would never get this, and then when you actually get it, you're kind of like, I can't believe I've gotten this, and therefore it's held in a higher esteem than because of that circumstances. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I enjoyed the episode a lot. I have feedback, and things that I think.
One would hope, considering we're doing a podcast. Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, but
no, I get that. I think that's fair. I think there's something to that. That a part of the allure is the mystery for so long of what is this? What is this? What would this be like if we got to see it completed? But I think also part of the allure, and we'll talk about this a little bit here in a minute. I think also is because this was written by Douglas Adams.
I was just going to say that, Charles. I think also Douglas Adams, with his fanatic fan base, the idea that it was Baker, which is one of the Baker is one of the most beloved Doctor.
Right.
You could make the argument that combined, kind of amped the mystery. If this had been perhaps because there is not that of all the Troughton episodes that we've lost. I mean, people wish that we had them, but there isn't that. Oh, I wish we could do this. But I think when you throw in Baker and you throw in the great, writer, and because he is, Douglas Adams is somebody pretty special, and to have that, it's kind of to mix it right. If there was an unknown Brian Wilson or Beatles song or a Springsteen song, you're like, that has always been heard, and all of a sudden you have a chance to hear it, whether it's own or mediocre, the idea you can do it is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking of when the Beatles anthology albums came out.
Yeah.
Like the song like Real Love, which was which was an unreleased track that was completed with the help of Jeff Lynne from ELO.
Yeah.
And so we finally got to hear that. And, obviously, people were like, well, I love it or I hate it or whatnot, but at least it was out there. And,
Yes.
and I think Shada is a perfect example of that on the Doctor Who end, because, it's something that it ticks off that box that a lot of older fans like myself had wanted to see. We got some various versions over the years, and I'm going to run those down. But this is the most, I'd say, complete version we've gotten, probably that we will ever be able to get, barring a major expense of doing better animation or some kind of or reconstruction through digital technology, perhaps. But yeah, so this is pretty much it for now. So let's get into it with that in mind. Guest cast. I want to run down the guest cast. Christopher Neame played Skagra, and of course reprises the role here for the 2017 version. He was in the movie Ghostbusters 2, and also episodes. He's kind of a genre veteran. He was in the 1991 episode of The Flash. So for the original Flash series back in the day, the Superboy TV series, the 1992 version of Human Target, the one that starred Rick Springfield, if you remember that. He's also been on Babylon 5, Star Trek Voyager, Star Trek Enterprise, and lots of other great things. Denis Carey plays Professor Chronotis, a.k.a. Sally Avon, as it turns out, and he turned up later in the Doctor Who episodes The Keeper of Traken, which was my very first full story watching Doctor Who, and also he turned up as the fake version of the Borad in Time Lash, a Colin Baker story. And we also had Daniel Hill playing Chris Parsons, who turned up not too long ago in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, and also the TV series Broadchurch, and the TV series 24 Live Another Day, that I believe Jesse was a fan of, if I'm not mistaken. Victoria Burgoyne played Claire Kitely. Gerald Campion played Wilkin, and he was actually, interestingly enough, he was in the movie Chitty Chitty Bang Bang from back in the day, if you're familiar with that. And we had Shirley Dixon as Skagra's ship. So a little bit of trivia there, and some more trivia. There with Shada, there is a lot of trivia. I'm trying to narrow it down to the essential stuff. So you're probably going to have to bear with me a little bit. The location filming in Cambridge and the first of 3 studio sessions, of course, at the BBC Television Centre were completed as scheduled, but when the scheduled second studio block was about to start, it got delayed due to a long-running technicians dispute at the BBC. And this ultimately is what doomed Shada as a production back in the day. The strike was over by the onset of rehearsals for the third recording session, but ultimately the studio time was redirected to other higher priority Christmas programming, so that left the serial incomplete and unfinished. Now, after the production was halted, Douglas Adams expressed a low opinion of the script and was content to just let it remain obscure, but he ended up turning down offers to adapt the story in various forms, and once claimed that he had signed the contract allowing the script's release in 1992 that accompanied the VHS release in the UK. We didn't get that here in the States, unfortunately. But apparently it was it was inside a bunch of papers that were sent over by his agent for him to sign, and as a result, he wasn't aware what he was actually agreeing to. So if he had paid a little closer attention, we might not have had that script released back in the 90s. And Adams also, because of this being unfinished and Adams essentially wanting to just kind of set it aside and kind of move on, but he liked a lot of the ideas. So what he did, he ended up incorporating a lot of the story elements into his first Dirk Gently novel, Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. And that came out in 1987, and of course that was the very first novel in the series. And I love that book. I really enjoy it, but especially Professor Chronotis features very heavily in the book. So if you're at all curious, if you haven't read Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, one, shame on you, and two, if you're a Doctor Who fan, I think you'll really enjoy it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Charles, because I know what a big fan you are.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I read. I know I was working at Bangtech at the time, and I started Bangtech after Chris was born. So Chris was born in 89. So I'm guessing 91, 92 when I read the book, and I have not reread it. And so I did not remember any of the details. And so I am thinking I'm going to pick up the book again and reread it and kind of see. Is it more of a subtle themes?
Just certain plot ideas. I mean, especially with Professor Chronotis and having a room and then having it bigger on the inside, kind of thing. So,
okay, I will check it out
if I recall correctly. Let's put it that way.
Okay, good.
Highly recommend it though, and then especially if you like quirky things like Good Omens or just that kind of offbeat fare. I highly recommend it, and I think you enjoy it. So in 1983, we pick up in the timeline a little bit. We got some clips from Shada finally aired during the Five Doctors because Tom Baker had kind of declined to appear in the special, and they reworked the plot. Terrence Dicks rewrote like a madman and fit that in to make it work a little bit, even though it doesn't quite work at times. But at least, they sort of included Tom Baker in the Five Doctors.
So was Baker Eccleston before there was an Eccleston at this point in his tenure as a doctor?
Oh, yeah, which was why it was such a big deal when he finally agreed to do Big Finish audios. Because, he was very reluctant to return to the role because he had done it for 7 years. And so he wanted a break from that. And he felt that, doing the Five Doctors so soon after leaving the show in 1981 that... that it was just too close, and he wanted some distance from the role at that time. Much to fan.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I heard he also had some disagreements with the showrunner at the time. That
with John
he
Nathan
may have
Turner?
kept going he might have kept going in the part, but it wasn't gelling well anymore. So it was becoming more like work.
Yeah. It's a wasted. It was a lost opportunity. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of like Eccleston with The Day of the Doctor. I mean, thankfully we got John Hurt as a wonderful replacement, but I'm sure a lot of us would have loved to have seen Eccleston return as the Ninth Doctor. Okay, so we pick up 9 years after that, in 1992, where John Nathan Turner, said original showrunner, set out to complete the story for a VHS release. And he decided to commission new effects and a score for the project, and also arranged to have Tom Baker record linking material as narration to fill in those missing scenes that weren't completed during the production. So that was released in 1992, and then we finally got it on DVD at 2013. So a lot of us, I still have my old VHS tape from back in the day, and it's interesting, but I have to prefer animation to narration in this one because it just kind of feels like you leave the story and then you see Tom Baker in the studio, narrating for a little while, and then you go back to the story, and you kind of get pulled in and out of the story a little bit. I mean, that kind of happens here, I think, a little bit with the animation, but not as severely, I think, as narration. That's just my opinion, anyway.
And I don't want to drag out.
No, go ahead.
Too much, but I agree. I did not find I felt it was pretty seamless, the animation back and forth. Once you got used to it, I was just enjoying the story, and it kind of
right.
I did not. Oh, now we're doing animation. I just was. It's a matter of fact.
And how about you, Dave? Did you feel the same way?
It wasn't my first animation Doctor Who. Power of the Daleks got me there, and
right.
I saw how good that was, and so I was kind of ready for it. But yeah, it flowed pretty smoothly. I don't know how else they would have done it, really. The actors didn't look the same, so they couldn't do that, and some of them aren't around anymore. So it was the best solution possible.
Yeah. And unfortunately, there's a lot of it's because, with time and the advanced age of actors and whatnot, that sometimes these reconstructions can be limited. And so you kind of have to accept that maybe it's not going to be ideal, but at least it's better than nothing, right? So
it's way better than nothing.
Exactly. So lastly, in 2003, Big Finish Productions, and Jesse's probably not aware of this, they were commissioned by the BBC to remake Shada as an audio play, which was then webcast in 6 segments using Flash animation. Yeah, remember Flash? Not the superhero, but that little kind of clunky animation style a little bit. That
motion comics.
Yeah, motion comics, exactly. So yes. I'm holding up. This is the actual CD. Obviously, you can't see that out there in podcast land, but this is the Big Finish release. And you notice Tom Baker's face isn't on that. It's Paul McGann.
Yeah.
So the 8th Doctor. So this audio version didn't star Tom Baker either. It starred Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor, essentially adapting the story as an 8th Doctor story. But Lalla Ward had returned as Romana, and this time John Leeson was doing the voice of K9, as he should have done, because I tend to prefer John Leeson to David Brierley, but, to each their own. And so it was great to hear John Leeson voicing K9 in the story. So this is a pretty good adaptation. It's a little odd, where essentially you have the 8th Doctor kind of going back and kind of reliving an adventure that we knew happened to the 4th Doctor, and he's meeting 4th Doctor companions. So it's a little jarring in that regard, but again, it was so great just to hear Shada in some kind of form completed. So highly recommend it. It's kind of one of those little oddball curiosities that if after you watch Shada, this animated version, if you're curious about it, I'd recommend checking it out. All right. Good. So, like I said, a lot of trivia. I tried to narrow it down, and still talked a lot about trivia. Let's get into our main topics. So, at long last. So, 3 topics this time. Topic number 1, let's talk about the 4th Doctor, the Second Romana, and K9 Mark II. Here we have Tom Baker being, pretty much in his Tom Baker peak in a lot of ways, paired with Lalla Ward, who does some great banter with Tom Baker in this. And we have K9 being this time in this season 17, being voiced by David Brierley, although thankfully Leeson returns to the role in season 18 the following season. So, Jesse, let's start with you first. What did you make of the 4th Doctor in this one, and Romana, and in this version of the TARDIS team?
So first off, I'm going to quote you often. You are just so charming that you are that passionate about the voice of K9.
Yes, I am.
It reminds me of Springsteen fans like, no. Neil should have done the guitar solo instead of little Steven.
That's right.
So God bless you. I appreciate that. I feel like this, and I say this a lot, this is too long of a story. The 6 episodes... It needed a good. There is a good plot. There is a good story.
Right.
I think it needed, and I realize, well, Jesse, back then they were 6 episodes. I get all that. I'm just saying from perspective of 2020, this could have been a good, 90-minute. Tight, really great episode, because there's so many good elements of this story.
Right.
And
so if they had chopped it into 4 instead of 6,
yes,
you think it would have been better off?
I personally think it would have, and I think you could have told the same story. I don't think you needed a lot, and I'm not saying there's filler. I'm just saying they took a long way around and not just pacing. Take a drink, everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I do think, gosh, someone mentioned this, and I know I mentioned it before, right? Like if you watch a old 70s TV show and like you'll see Barnaby Jones or Mike Mannix pull up at, in front of a house, get out of the car, walk up the sidewalk, go all the way to the door.
Right.
And you're like, no way they're doing this in modern TV, right? Like maybe, and no dialogue either. It's just doing
it's just a different style,
It is a very different style. Because I saw when we saw Chris, walking to get to the class, to meet it. I, am not, I am certainly not the expert in classic, but it is great to see Romana and the Doctor interact back and forth. I really like her.
You like their chemistry?
I like the chemistry a lot. They both seem to really enjoy their roles. I love the fact that she is an equal. Every time I watch a classic episode, and you two will have to convince me why I'm wrong, but I regret the modern era's decision to get rid of Gallifrey. I just think there was so much storyline and that history. It was nice to see that he met an old Time Lord, right? When we get to that segment, it was a nice little bonus. And so I love the fact that, she is a Time Lord as well, and they have this, there's discussions about protocol and history and all this stuff. It's some really, really nice things. And K9, did what he's supposed to do. He shot his ray. He called Tom Baker master. K9 was very K9-ish this episode, and I loved it.
Well, he also helping Romana and Claire with Professor Chronotis' TARDIS and piloting that, and so
the heartbeat, Morse code. So yeah, K9 was just good stuff.
Exactly.
Very,
right.
Very nice.
All right. Jesse's trying to play it safe here, I see. So, all right. So, Dave, any thoughts about the Fourth Doctor, Romana, and K9 in this one?
I've always loved K9 because of his ridiculousness, and I've actually read some statements by some of the actors. Tom Baker, I believe, is like, we designed this thing, and you didn't give it enough wheels to roll over anything, but flat ground. Oh my goodness! But I love K9. He's just your little dream. If you could think of a dog being any more loyal than anything else, and now your dog knows everything, that's great. And can shoot lasers. Romana, well, I was in love with Romana, so there we go. I'll just say that. And
both Romanas or just this Romana?
Well, the other one wasn't there long enough to get deep into my heart. This one, I like the back and forth because even though human companions have often been great in that storytelling stand-in for the audience, another Time Lord seems like, okay, we're both there. We know what we can do. Let's do it. And you get that extra forward, like two superheroes getting together.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like if Batman teamed up with Batgirl or what have you.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. And or the X-Men, where they complement each other. They practice so much they know when to let the other one do their thing.
Right.
And I was hoping Missy would kind of do that in the modern thing, but she's gone too soon. And to talk about pacing, I've often jumped in, Jesse, with both feet, going, "Yeah, it's paced too long." But when TV came around, and I know it was before the '60s, but it was starting to be more and more entertainment than it was just filming other things. The actors that came into it had been from more of a stage background, and they were doing like 40-some episodes for William Hartnell, and it's down to like 20-something in the Tom Baker, and now we're down to 10. So I don't know. Would you get more stories if you could keep the same writers and everybody on the same idea, and instead of 10 new ideas? You know what I'm saying? If you can take that one idea and spread it out into 3 or 4 parts or 5 or 6 parts,
Yeah.
then you get more of it. So I don't know,
Right.
but yeah, some shows
with
do
less
drag.
stories, you wouldn't have to build as many sets, so you could save a lot on
Yeah.
the budget. You wouldn't have to cast as many actors. So I think probably they were encouraged to write longer stories when possible, so that they wouldn't have to produce more stories.
And
You
I
could probably
also
film them in a long. Get them all. I'm sorry, Jesse. That
no,
was
no,
rude
go
of
ahead.
me.
Continue. No, it was
You-
not at all.
You can film, because I know they didn't work 45 weeks a year back in the day, but you can film 3 or 4 episodes over a 2-week period, and then move on in to putting it out there. Not like, let's say, take Star Trek: The Next Generation. It was do it. It was 1 week for each show, and now it's got to be months for one show. So
Yeah, and I know that's one of the reasons why Babylon 5 was so cost conscious. Is J. Michael Straczynski talks about he was always ahead on scripts, and so they had plenty of time to build the sets, and they knew what they were going to do. I greatly acknowledge I am doing Monday morning show running. If this was
Technically it's Wednesday evening, but go ahead.
yes, well, Monday morning quarterbacking. So if this would have come out, what year would this have been originally shown?
If it had come out as scheduled, it would have come out in 1980.
Okay, so if 1980 Jesse is watching this one episode at a time with a week between me,
Right.
I don't think I would have this concern, because I think the same thing if you binge any CW show or an ABC or an NBC show, if you're watching them all in a row, you're like, okay, this episode really, we didn't need this was as much. You could have pushed this another. So I acknowledge that. But that's why Charles and I get paid the big bucks to discuss this.
Wait, we get paid? I don't get paid. How did you get paid? I want to know. All right. I love Tom Baker in this story. I think he's a lot of fun. He seems like he really enjoys himself, especially in the scenes in Professor Chronotis' office / TARDIS, and when he faces off against Skagra, and gets to obviously be the hero to the baddie and act all like he's the smartest man in the room, because of course he is, and he's kind of like at the peak of his powers. He's comfortable. He's been in the role several years by now. He knows what to do. He knows what the audience likes from him, and just really is just clicking on all cylinders by this point. And then you've got Lalla Ward just bantering with him in a just a really fun way. And to Dave's point, yeah, because with Romana being a Time Lord as well, just a younger one, the Doctor can rely on her. He doesn't have to, you notice he doesn't do like he does with a lot of companions and complain about how they wander off. He trusts Romana, and if she wanders off, there's a reason for it, and knows that she's going to be okay because she's a Time Lord. So he trusts her more. And even though, essentially because he's older, she's younger, it's kind of like more like a master apprentice in a lot of ways. But yeah, they have a great relationship, and it really comes through on screen in a lot of ways. And then K9's of course fun because it's K9. I don't think I need to add any more to that, but it's just always fun, and I really enjoy the camaraderie in this particular TARDIS team. It really shines through, and when you get paired, when Tom Baker is allowed to recite Douglas Adams' dialogue, it makes for some wonderful scenes and wonderful lines and a lot of great quotes, which I'm sure we'll talk about later in our episode.
I saw some of the deleted scenes on the edition I have, and he's actually editing some of the things, and he gives his apologies to Douglas Adams as he's doing it. And I thought that was just, well, you knew the man, so okay.
Yeah.
Well, can I say this too? I'm a trainer at work, and I like to kid myself in that means my boss wants me to create more people who do the job like I do it.
Yes.
And I get that impression from the Doctor. And she was stuffy when she first came out. And she...
Romana, you mean?
Yeah, Romana, yes. And she became more and more like the Doctor. And, they're a match set eventually. So...
Yeah, one of the things that you reminded me about, Charles, as you were talking, is the great scene where the Doctor is debating with the computer and using false logic to explain why, well, I must be dead, therefore you don't need to worry about me. And, of course, it backfires on him a little bit, like, well, dead men don't need air.
Yep.
And
that is a pure Douglas Adams idea, let me tell you.
Yeah,
Yes.
That is so pure. And it reminded me of when Baker was the caretaker. And
you mean the curator?
Yeah, curator. Yeah, with
Curator,
with
yes.
Matt Smith, it's almost that same kind of. It felt like it could have been. That scene could have been pushed into this,
right?
Because that dialogue of, well, maybe you'll be me, or maybe I'll be me, and over and back. It was just really beautiful, and I think you're right. I think him, seeing him do those words, and I've been talking about this a lot lately, but because it's just front of mind, I just went through all of West Wing, and you see people talking with Aaron Sorkin dialogue in those first 4 seasons. It is music. And I think Douglas Adams writing Doctor Who is music, and Tom Baker does it better than anyone.
Yeah, because in a lot of ways, Douglas Adams was essentially a lot like a lot of modern era writers, especially like Russell T Davies, where there's a lot of quippy lines, a lot of banter back and forth, and just it gives especially when a talented actor like Tom Baker, or in the modern era's case David Tennant, something really good to chew on as an actor, I think. So what did everybody make of that scene? Since Jesse kind of hinted at it a little bit, the scene at the end where in this 2017 production, the older Tom Baker gets to reprise his role as the Fourth Doctor, popping out from underneath that TARDIS console after a slightly awkward, tiny explosion takes place. And what did you make of? Now, Jesse, obviously, since I can't recall if you'd seen Shada before or not.
I had not.
So were you surprised by the real Tom Baker, the modern Tom Baker making his appearance at the end?
Yes, my brain does not compute. I'm going,
Kirk.
Okay, yes, was this how the original episode ended? And wow, did they do a really good job of making paper, the makeup work? And because you've gone back and forth between actual footage and,
so you thought that was from the original production?
No, I thought that originally.
Okay.
My first thought was, because they have not reshot any films. Anything new had all been animated.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, obviously this must have been. But then I got to thinking, no, that looks too much. I mean, that isn't a makeup job. That is Tom Baker in this time period. So I'm going, okay, they must have just added this twist because they don't have to deal with it, or you don't have to have another episode of how did the Doctor become young again, because this is kind of a standalone episode. I guess there are plenty of people, and God bless them, because they're the people that will listen to our podcast, will debate on where this should fit within Baker's, adventures and,
right,
and how to do that. But I just thought it was a really nice little moment.
It's a little mini episode of The Curator. No, just kidding.
Yeah, but for just half a second, I mean, I went, wow, did they, in the next episode, did they deal with this? And wow, that makeup is amazing. He looks really I'm like, oh, wait a minute. So yes, that was my first thought.
That was good. Dave, how about you? What was your reaction to seeing Tom Baker there in the first time you saw this?
Well, I saw Tom Baker in the as the curator,
Right, and Day as a doctor, yeah.
and I noticed he needs a cane to get around. So I want to know if that's a stuntman that had to get up off the floor like that. And that's a lot to ask of a man of his age.
I think that was. I think it was.
Yeah.
He just probably kind of was hunched over behind the console and probably raised up. But the guy getting off the floor was probably a double, body double.
So, a couple of things. You have to remember that Tom Baker looks like Jodie Whittaker when he gets older, and because he's the doctor. And I'm missing two things. You got Lalla Ward's dialogue, but you don't get to see her. And maybe I don't know if she didn't want to be seen as that character or what, but no, there's no canine.
They would have to explain how she looks older, I'm guessing.
I know how she was. She's in the other room with that little red book flipping through the pages.
Yeah.
And now she's old.
Got it. But yeah, they would have to explain, because they explained Tom Baker looking older with the little tiny explosion underneath the TARDIS console. But yeah, you got to hear K9, I believe, in that scene. But yeah, I thought it was a wonderful surprise. It was kind of rumored there for a while when the release came out, just before it came out, so that he had done something for it. We didn't know exactly what. And then when the word got out that he had reprised the Fourth Doctor, everybody was just so ecstatic. And then when I finally got to see that, when they finally released the video here in the States, I was really happy about that. I mean, it was wonderful, and it kind of gave Tom at that little bit of a chance to kind of say goodbye on screen. And even though obviously later on he would do the Big Finish audios, and so it was just wonderful to hear and see that grin once again, that traditional Tom Baker grin.
Yeah, and me, because we did get him in the Day of the Doctor, because I remember having that excitement. I mean, when Ken and his son Parker were here, and they were ecstatic. I was ecstatic, like, oh, what a great, neat thing that we're seeing. So yeah, this was. I can imagine back then, your little Doctor Who heart was, just beting with gladness.
Hearts plural, thank you very much.
Indeed.
Exactly.
When you see Christopher Eccleston and stuff, Tennant's everywhere, and I love it every time I see him. Matt Smith's been in a few things that you catch up with. I love him in the Terminator.
Right. The Blinken, you miss it cameo in the Terminator. Yeah.
You don't see Tom Baker in very many things. I was reading his IMDb a while back, and I mean like a year ago, and I'm like, he was in Willow, and it was almost enough to go watch Willow again.
Nothing wrong with that. Willow's a great movie.
I just hadn't seen it in forever. Didn't have fond memories of it. I don't think I watched it at a good time.
It's a great kids movie.
It's made by great makers, and you gotta love Muppets, and of course. I can't remember. The guy that played Willow, he's in everything, and I love him.
Val Kilmer? Oh, you mean, Willow.
The little guy.
Yeah. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he's in the Harry Potter movies and all that.
And in Star Wars, it's Warwick Davis.
Warwick Davis, there you go.
Yeah.
So he's a favorite, but you just don't see Tom Baker. And
he also appeared on Doctor Who, by the way. He was in Nightmare in Silver.
Yes, he played the Emperor. Yes.
Yep.
I'll have to go check that out. I must have missed it.
During Matt Smith's era. Yep. You're written by Neil Gaiman. Yeah.
The second Neil Gaiman episode.
Another great author.
Yep.
So, I'm not likely to wander around and meet him on the street in California if I ever visit. So any little bit helps. And you just hear his voice and you're like, oh, that's him. So.
Yeah, it's very cool.
That's how I feel.
Yes, very cool.
All right. Ready to move on? Any other thoughts about the Doctor, Romana, or K9? All right.
Not for me.
Topic number 2. Let's talk about Professor Chronotis, a.k.a. Sally Avon, and Chris and Claire. Essentially kind of almost companions in this story. Jesse, you and I have talked a lot about, Doctor Who characters that could easily fit into those companion roles. And I think it's safe to say that Chris and Claire you could kind of see them as sort of companions in this story in a lot of ways. Especially Claire, who when she's partnered up with Professor Chronotis, almost becomes his companion in the story a little bit. So, Jesse, any thoughts about Professor Chronotis and the reveal of Salyaven or Chris Parsons or Claire?
All right, so things can bother me.
Yes.
Why is...
He asked trepidatiously, yes.
Why is the TARDIS in his office at the beginning of the episode?
Yeah.
I have that written down too.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's no reason why it would be.
I have 4-word answer for that.
Okay.
Wibbly, wobbly, timey, wimey.
Well, he lands it looking for him because when he comes back and finds the little guy out front, he's like, "Is he back yet?"
Yeah, that's why they go. That's why they go punting down in the river along in Cambridge, because they parked the TARDIS there looking for Professor Chronotis. He was out. So they decided, okay, we'll just go punting for a while, and then we'll check back in later, and that's what they do.
So I missed that I missed that subplot. I don't know if you're.
Well, it's more of a logical leap because you saw them punting, right?
Yes.
So they were already on campus, so presumably they had arrived in the TARDIS logically. And we knew they were looking for Professor Chronotis. So presuming he was out, they probably went out either looking for him or just decided, hey, let's go do something for a little while and enjoy the nice day, and then come back and check in later and see if he sure turns up.
But he seemed to ignore the TARDIS that's there. So is that just because he's kind of timey-wimey in his head?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I mean,
I'll allow it.
The same thing that, the same thing that like makes him forget about, a very important book in the story, or
maybe it's Dream.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I'll buy that because it didn't make any sense to me, and it bothered me a lot.
Yeah,
I got a different problem with it.
All right,
Castrovalva.
Yeah,
Castrovalva. How can you have a TARDIS in a TARDIS?
Well, because it's not the same TARDIS. It's a different TARDIS. It's not It's not recursion like it was in.
Okay. Then John Pertwee, he had a TARDIS inside of the Master's TARDIS, and it caused all kinds of havoc.
Right. Maybe this one didn't, because for one thing, the Doctor's TARDIS was actually more advanced than Salyaven's TARDIS.
True.
So maybe they kind of, in that new version, that new update, they corrected that flaw, perhaps.
Maybe,
I'm just speculating here. So.
All right. So in my mind,
yes,
I believe that anytime they send someone into the TARDIS, go to the right, then the left, then your right, then your left, that the TARDIS lights the floor in front of them to get them there, because that is the only reason. This is a consistent.
You mean like when Romana told Chris to get
the medical kit,
the medical kit, and go give all the directions, go down this, turn this, and then go that way.
And we just talked about that in a previous episode, right? Like you and I would be going, wait, hold on, let me write this down. And it's always the first door, right? Like it's first on the right, first on the left. So I believe that the TARDIS has a built-in guide either on the floor or on the walls that points arrows like you're going in the right way. Nope, not this one. So
or the TARDIS rearranges itself for new people that come into the TARDIS, so that the room where the thing would be is just right there.
But then why does she say go to the corridor to the right, to the corridor to the left?
Maybe she doesn't realize that. I don't know. It's hard to say. The TARDIS does what the TARDIS wants.
Absolutely. And we now know they keep milk at the TARDIS kitchen.
Yep.
And so that brings up a whole other question.
There's a cow.
How often do they change? Where do they go shopping? Do they ever get their milk that's expired, or does Time Lord milk never expire?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It could be alien milk. Maybe it doesn't expire.
Yeah, it could be.
Or They go back. They go so far ahead into the future, get the milk, and therefore, when in the past, it hasn't expired yet.
There you go. I loved the professor. I thought that Carey did a great job of playing him just enough befuddled, but also at times really brilliant. The idea
Charming.
the idea that he could just be there on campus and no one would really notice that this guy just kept forever being there. And that's why I said seeing him, and I get story-wise, but I just feel like you're missing so much in the modern era by not having other Gallifreyans to run into. But then I grew up on the Superman family. It was not the lone survivor of Krypton. When I read Superman, there was a freaking army of people from Krypton.
And then John Byrne came in 1987 and made him the lone survivor of Krypton.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
So,
David, how about you?
Well, I kind of got to my point about it shouldn't have been allowed, but about the running in the thing, getting directions and going. You ever take a baby to get their shots? You have to distract them. If you don't distract somebody, you're running on an errand into the TARDIS on their first trip. They're going to be like, oh my God, it's bigger on the inside. So maybe it's that if I keep this in my mind.
He does that double take. He comes back out of the TARDIS for a little bit and goes like, but, and then she's like, go, get the thing.
But it kept him on mission, so
yeah.
Maybe that's the thing. If you got too much in your head, you can't. Your cache gets full, so to speak.
Well, with humans, they have limited brain capacity, so Romana had to kind of focus him, like you said.
Now, I have to ask this, and I want opinions, please. How is Dr. Chronotis or Professor Chronotis's power to go into someone's mind, and he gave the woman Claire some brilliance.
Yes.
How was that different than when the doctor does that connect or whatever?
You mean contact?
Contact. That's
yes.
the one. He goes contact, and he's able to do that. Normally, that's just between Time Lords, but I've seen him do communications like that with humans. So I don't get it.
With humans, he kind of has, the Doctor has been kind of shown with limited telepathic ability.
Right.
He, with himself or other Time Lords, he's able to do, like with the Master or whomever, he's able to share that through that link, that Gallifreyan link somehow. But with humans, it's more like, he's able to hypnotize, he's able to kind of sense some things. He's got limited psychic ability. Probably with it, like when he uses the psychic paper, that's probably some of that. We know he has a telepathic link with the TARDIS as well, but through the telepathic circuits in the TARDIS. But they made a point of saying that Professor Chronotis is special. And Sally Avon was the only one with this ability to do something like that. And that's kind of what made him most partially a threat. So important, like much of a threat because of that extra special mental ability, I think.
That makes good sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think it's one of those where...
That's why, he was considered a criminal and whatnot.
Yeah, and it's kind of like time cannot be rewritten except when it can be rewritten, except when it can't, depending on the storyline. So I think this was convenient.
It's Doctor Who, roll with it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I like the idea that our lovable professor ended up being this villain. I thought that was a nice reveal. I did not see that coming. I thought,
or at least a reformed villain, because he didn't act evil. He didn't have a evil plan. He was just kind of like, I'm a retired criminal, I guess. He stole some books from Gallifrey.
There's nothing that doesn't say that, just like at our own government, when you look back far enough, they did things that you would go, man, that's not cool. Maybe they just didn't like him because he was different.
Well, I mean, politics could very easily be involved here.
Absolutely.
Especially, given his mental abilities, maybe some Time Lords saw him as a threat.
Yeah,
or
very easily could have been.
That's why they're always against the Doctor going out and doing his thing.
That's a very good point, because yes, a lot of Time Lords did see the Doctor as a threat. They considered him an outcast, and I think that's partially why he left Gallifrey originally with Susan, was that he was treated as an outcast, and we've recently got some possible more hints into that with the Timeless Children about why that was. So
and I think it's interesting too, right? Because he talks about he admired, like one of my childhood heroes. What? Well, it was because he was different, and because this guy was brilliant and thought things differently, and so the Doctor's going to respect that. So we do get the idea that it wasn't, and some of the people in the prison were
truly
really
evil
people. Yeah. But this guy, it seems like it could have been just.
I'd see as more of as a political prisoner than
like
an
Galileo,
actual.
Right? Like Galileo was, arrested for his beliefs that later proved to be true, right?
Right.
So really, I thought that was an interesting twist, very Douglas Adams-ish and nice. I agree with you about our two other leads, our two students.
Yeah.
They had some nice chemistry. I bought off Amazon the direct digital version of it, and they had some extras, and they showed Daniel Hill interviewing afterwards and talking about the show, and actually he fell in love with one of the production's assistants, and they're still married, which was, I thought, a nice piece of trivia. But I liked him a lot. I think that once, we do this a lot, Charles, but you absolutely could say these would be people to come back to, and they would be cool companions. If they had gone back that and had that couple kind of traveling, it would have been nice. I liked them a lot.
Yeah, I think they had potential as companions. Yeah,
I liked the fact that I don't think they tried to play Claire like she wasn't as smart, but Chris certainly walked around like he was the smartest man in the room. And then when he meets the Doctor, he's certainly not the smartest man in the room. The Doctor even tells him so.
Yep.
And then Claire, at the end of this, theoretically, is the smartest person native to the planet. So
we don't know how long that effect lasts. Is it permanent?
Hope forever. I hope forever.
I do too, because I think it would be kind of cool that she got kind of raised up a level. She leveled up. With
do you understand this? I do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Chris is like, I don't understand this, and then she's like, I do. So that's kind of great. Yeah, I think I'm hoping that she did get to keep that extra boost of intelligence.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Although I did, kind of wonder, well, okay, you've got this extra boost of intelligence, but yet you still let go of the lever at the worst possible time.
So did Romana, though, and she's a Time Lord.
She's like, oh, it's hot. And Romana's like, use your elbow or something. Come on.
Get a pencil.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So, that was funny.
And
so she reaches for a pencil. It's like, what? What are you doing? You can't let go, even for a second.
Indeed.
Come on.
Indeed.
So where's that vaunted intelligence then? No, that's what I'm saying. All right. I love Denis Carey as Professor Chronotis. I love the fact that he's this befuddled, often forgetful, very charming guy. Like anybody that shows up at his door, he's right there in the kitchen making some tea, asking everybody, what they want. Do you want sugar? You want milk? And would you want some? Do you want biscuits? You want crackers with that? And just there's a great line that he asks the Doctor if he wants cracker. He says crackers, and the Doctor says,
it's one of my quotes.
Occasionally, yes, or something like that. That's good.
Yeah, it's one of my quotes.
That's great. That's a great line. And so just a very charming guy. And then the reveal. Were you at all surprised by the reveal, guys, or did you see that coming?
I was surprised the first time I watched it. But I also was watching the other characters early on, and I saw that Claire picked up on it before anybody else. She was like, but she doesn't say anything. And I was like, hey, look at that. She really is smart.
Yep. How about you, Jesse?
I was surprised. I thought it was a nice twist. It wasn't like it felt earned. Like it wasn't like, oh, hey, that's kind of out of just random.
Right.
I mean, it makes sense that they said that he'd been there forever and he'd done that. And so, yeah, I thought it was very cool.
Yeah.
I can't help. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, just a great character, and I'd love to see more of him.
I cannot help but compare him to the 12th Doctor when he meets Bill, living for long term.
You're going to give away my reverse the polarity.
Oh, so sorry.
Shush.
But here I do have to say this, though. There was a time where you could see how colleges, the old professor, because he remembered all these things from way back. And Cambridge must have a giant library.
It does.
And
it's one of the top universities in the world, just saying.
Yeah.
Exhausting all of that to do a little research. This kid, Chris, has got to go and find this professor and beg another book. Do you think kids in school appreciate how hard research was back then? You don't just get a Wikipedia.
Yeah, I mean, all you had was a card catalog in the library. So
no
internet. Get to that book in a month.
Well, you mean you had microfiche, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's about it, right? So yeah, just everybody, don't know how you had it back in the days when, we played with rocks and sticks and just got electricity.
Absolutely.
So, all right.
Oh, goodness.
All right. Anything else about these characters before we move on? All right. Topic number 3, final topic. Let's talk about Skagra, the Skaggs, sometimes occasionally called the Krargs, but I like the Skaggs because, for one thing, it's easier to pronounce, and then two, it's an anagram of Skagra, if you noticed, and the planet Shada, the Time Lord prison of the prison of the Time Lord. So, Jesse, any thoughts about our big bad Skagra, or his little hench guys, the Skaggs, or any thoughts about the Time Lord prison?
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting concept, right? Like, Kryptonians had, they created the Phantom Zone where they put the worst of the worst. So it makes sense that if you also wonder, why hasn't the Master been in there? And has the Master broken out multiple times? Is that why he's not there?
That's a great story idea.
Yeah.
That if he's been in there, you'd think he would be.
Yeah, exactly. And, kind of like how going back to, Luther kept breaking out of prison, during the classic.
He's probably like the Joker breaking out of Arkham Asylum every week. So. Yes,
exactly. So I thought this was a really interesting, an interesting premise. He has a plan. He wants to, he knows if he can access this, he can, use that the next step to taking over the universe. He was a very charming villain.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little. It was like, oh, he's in contemporary clothes. He's in, futuristic clothes. He's in contemporary clothes and futuristic clothes. But I rolled with it. I liked it. I liked him a lot. A fun beast that it actually looked better animated than it did in real life, I think.
Yeah.
It wasn't a very good beast with it's like.
You mean the Skaggs? The Skaggs?
Yeah, let's take a bunch of rags and make a costume out of it. But he was a cool monster.
I kind of consider them more like roofing tiles.
That is exactly what it is.
It's a roofing tile creature.
Yes, it is. But they were great. What about you, David?
I guess when I'm looking at them, I'm like, big, dumb, hulking thing. You're not going to fit very many places, a big thing like that. And I can't imagine trying to wear the costume. But if I had the ability to create something that I was going to make, I would make smaller but more instead of big and few.
Yeah.
Because, I work with, I'm a law enforcement officer, and big, small, or otherwise, the cops all can do the same job. So if I can get more of them as opposed to just the one big one, I'm going to go with more of them.
Right.
So I didn't like that. The one question I had about him is it looked like he was making them. But the Doctor knew what they were and called them by name. prior to anybody what are those? So they must exist somewhere. Maybe he's cloning them instead of creating them outright. But
well, like I said, it's an anagram of Skagra, so maybe he just made that up using Skagra's name. I don't know.
It's great. He wants to have the entire universe. He wants to be the entire universe, but he is henchman.
Yeah.
I need henchmen. Okay, great.
You need guys that are going to do all the grunt work that you don't want to do.
It's not the worst monster I've ever seen, and it was. I liked the android last week way better.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, in the visitation that we talked about?
Yeah. I feel like it was just, they were too inconveniently huge and apparently molten. So that's another environmental problem. Why is it so hot in here? Oh, there's two of those things back there. Jeez. Would you guys leave me alone? I'm trying to eat. Or whatever. You get life goes on and you get these giant molten beasts hulking around. What would you like us to do now?
Well, if they are roofing tile monsters, they probably smell like roofing tar. I'm just saying.
Oh, it's probably heinous, yeah.
Yeah, it's probably pretty bad. Pretty bad. All right. Any thoughts about, Dave, you got any thoughts about Shada being a Time Lord prison?
Well, I think I once saw a Sylvester Stallone movie that had to do with freezing people, and Austin Powers did it. So, it is a way to...
You mean Demolition Man?
Demolition Man, indeed. And Austin Powers...
With a song by Sting in that. That's why I know that. Yeah.
But do you rehabilitate anybody? These advanced races out there, and we'll just lock them up forever. So it serves them right that people are escaping from it, because clearly I don't know. It seems a little inhumane. Sure, time doesn't pass, but it's death if you don't ever let them out. So how is that any different than lowly humans having the death penalty? These Time Lords are basically sentencing people to death. I don't know what all they did, but it's a very diverse crowd that they had in there. And you're right. There weren't any Cybermen or the Master or Ronnie or any of those characters that ought to be in there. And the Doctor's the only one out fighting them. So,
and it was an interesting the way they had them instead of individual cells, just all kind of there, like in the control rooms or stuff. It was an interesting way to begin the episode.
They're in Gen Pop. They're in general population.
I guess so. Yes.
It reminded me of the Tomb of the Cybermen. When they're just all in rows on a shelf, like collectors.
It totally not important, but as I was watching this to begin with, I'm like, I don't know if I could sleep that way. Like, I would have to turn. Yeah, I know, because I don't know that at first, though. So I'm like, I would have to turn on my side, and you really can't turn on your side. So that doesn't look like it'd be very uncomfortable. I don't care if it is low gravity. So the odd things that I think about while watching TV.
Yeah,
I think it's terrible.
You had some interesting targets when you zero in on something as you watch. Yeah, stuff that I would not even pay attention to be quite honest, because I'm too busy wrapped up in the story. I guess I think the idea of a Time Lord prison is cool. I'm not sure how the execution of that really works, because for one thing, there weren't any guards, and unless they were just automated systems that kept charged the prisoners. We don't know how they were fed or what have you, if those systems had broken down over time. Because essentially we're told that the Time Lords had this prison, and then they kind of forgot about it because Salyaven kind of made them forget about it while he was covering for his escape. So nobody really noticed about it, and then even the Doctor and Romana are kind of like, let's see, Shada. So, go ahead.
And that's not a very nice thing to do for that very reason, right? Like, he forgets everyone.
Yeah.
Therefore, he's sentenced, as you guys talked earlier. They're now sentenced to the rest of their life. There's no chance for parole. They're, but I got the feeling this was similar to the Phantom Zone.
Yes.
That you these are the worst of the worst. You put them in there, and then you lock the door and forget about it. Throw away the key.
Yeah, and apparently forget about the entire prison that exists.
There you go.
Yes.
I thought
because it's never brought up again.
That place that Omega was sent was more like the Phantom Zone.
Yeah, the antimatter universe. Yeah, yeah,
because he's all there by himself, stuck.
yeah. That's more like the Anti-Monitor, I think.
Okay.
In Crisis on Infinite Earths. Just saying, because Omega is kind of like the precursor to the Anti-Monitor a little bit. But yeah, the Craggs, yeah, they're kind of forgettable henchman monster guys. But Skagra, I thought, was an interesting villain, even though occasionally he kind of dresses like Elton John in the '70s a little bit, a little flamboyant, a little over the top, especially with that particular chapeau he wears. But yeah, it's almost like he changes to modern appearance. To your point, Jesse, that when he needs to get around, less inconspicuous, more inconspicuously, because obviously that white outfit he's got, is going to draw some eyeballs as he's walking down the street. So maybe he figured, well, I'll just dress like the humans, and maybe I won't get noticed as much, perhaps, and I can go about doing my evil supervillain thing.
By the way you said humans, you said it almost
Humans.
Yes.
Yes. Well, that's the way you got to pronounce it. You got to pronounce it like for humans. Yeah.
You must have just watched Lower Deck.
No, actually, no. I mean, I did see that this past week,
Yes. Yes.
But no, I was watching some Deep Space Nine earlier today. So, yeah.
Me too.
Yep. So there you go. Yeah, Deep Space Nine, one of my all-time favorites, especially of the Star Trek series. Yes.
As a soldier, many years ago, I figured that white outfit must make you stand out, just like the sailors when they come to shore in those white outfits they wore. I'm like,
yeah.
It is pretty. Oh yeah.
The little hat.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, the kind of white sailor uniform. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't know you're a soldier, Dave. Thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you.
We would definitely appreciate that. That's cool. Cool to know. Anything else about this episode that we didn't talk about? You want to bring up?
I can't think of. One of the things you didn't say in the trivia and this behind the scenes to talk about the singing group, how that happened.
Oh, yeah, the version of the Whiffin' Poops.
Yes. So how that happened is one of them was working at the bar where they all went after the initial filming.
Yeah.
And they were supposed to do the bicycle chase at night. And because of the strike, they couldn't, and they said, okay, we're going to have to do it in the day. And while they were drinking, one of the singers had said, hey, can we be in the episode? And they had drank too much. I'm like, yeah, sure. So the next day, all the guys showed up, and you're like, do you remember saying this? Yeah, I think we did. And so
that's funny.
They filmed it, and then the episode never showed. So they all went and told their parents, their friends, hey, we're going to be in a Doctor Who episode.
And then it never aired.
And it never aired. Yeah, so it's a funny story.
You bring that up. That was a very funny scene, especially, with the great gag as the Doctor's on the bicycle. And they're singing, Chattanooga, pardon me, Chattanooga choo-choo, pardon me, boy, have you seen the Chattanooga? And as the Doctor rides by, he does he rings the bell on his bicycle in perfect time with the music.
Yes.
Right at that point. So I thought that was a clever gag.
Yeah, I did too.
A lot of, it's going to go over a lot of younger people's heads, but if you're familiar at all, at least enough with that song, having heard it, watching TV or something, you probably appreciated that little gag.
Absolutely.
All right.
So the only last thing I had to add that is probably something you can just chop right out of here is when Claire has the book and she's flipping back and forth through it, I noticed it starts out at 1 after 1 in the afternoon, and then it's like 1 after, it's 4 after, and back and forth.
Yeah, so she flips forward through the book, the time goes forward, and then she flips back and the time goes backward.
But nothing outside is changing. And I also noticed it was earlier when they're there later with the Doctor looking at it. I'm like, it's just crazy. It bothered me. There was like attention to detail. We're going to make the clock important. We're going to leave it right there in the center of the screen. It's going to be less important. But that's just me, pedantic.
Big ball, wibbly wobbly, timey wimey stuff. Just saying.
Yeah, I can't even figure out time zones, and it was almost going to be for this.
Yeah,
so.
you made us a little nervous with that. Like when you said like so is Eastern Standard like 2 hours ahead of Mountain Time? And I'm like, yeah, it is.
Well, I knew that. My family's on the East Coast. I just had put it in my phone as being 9 o'clock at night and not. Anyway, I had to take a personal day. So, anyway.
We appreciate you going that extra mile for us. We definitely do.
Yeah.
All right. Hopefully you would think it was worth it. All right.
It was.
Okay. So if nothing else, favorite lines. We had a lot of great lines in this episode. It's a Douglas Adams script, so there's got to be some great lines to talk about. So, Jesse, we'll start with you first. What's your favorite lines of the episode?
Let's start with David.
Okay. All right, Dave. Let's start with you. Go ahead.
You already touched on the one that I really like the best. Chronotis says, tea? Yes. Milk? Yes. 2 lumps? Yes. And sugar? Yes. Crackers? Sometimes. That was great.
That's a brilliant line. Great line. Yes. Especially with Tom Baker kind of doing the Tom Baker, like, sometimes, with the big wide eyes and the grin. Yeah.
And I love the reoccurring bit about tea, like, I don't have any more cups. That was nice.
I just have 2 more.
Go for it.
Cut me off if you want to.
Go for it.
Doctor, that man must be mad, mustn't he? Oh, madness, sanity. It's all a matter of opinion. And what's your opinion? Oh, he's mad as a hatter.
That's a good line.
That was a great line.
Yeah.
And I couldn't help but admire the BBC blog when he's trying to remember Chris Parsons' name. He goes, A, no, it's not A. B, C? BBC.
Yes, that was good.
So I thought that was great.
I love it. I love that, they go through the entire alphabet with Professor Chronotis, and the doctor reaches Y. Y? And yes, young Parsons. That was a great get.
Right at the beginning, yeah.
So pretty funny.
Great. Those are my favorites.
All right, Jesse, how about you? What's your favorite quotes? Any?
Yes. So and this actually gives credence to your kind of plan about why they parked the TARDIS there, right? But when the professor goes, I am, I was, I will be Professor Chronotis, oh dear, we Gallifreyans have never managed to come up with a satisfactory form of grammar to cover these situations. I thought that was really fun. And then the other thing that I loved is their version of the Green Lantern's oath, right, where Romana says, I just mouthed the words like everyone else. And the doctor, what words? At the time of Caddy induction ceremony, I swear to protect the ancient laws of Gallifrey with all my might and main. I will to the end of my days with justice and with honor temper my actions and my thoughts. And the doctor, pompous lot, all words, no action, which is just perfect because he has such disdain for the Time Lords. So I just thought that was neat that Douglas took the time to write their version of a Green Lantern oath, a graduation ceremony, Hippocratic oath even there, and then the doctor just,
yeah.
So how about you, Charles?
Obviously there's a lot of lines. I'm going to just narrow it down to 3. For the sake of time, because I know we're running long. Romana, tells the doctor, I told you got the time wrong. And the doctor says, you're always saying that. And Romana replies, and you're always getting the time wrong.
It's beautiful.
Such great banter between Tom Baker and Lalla Ward in this. The doctor with Chris Parsons, where he goes, did you just see what I didn't see? And Chris replies, no. The doctor replies to that, neither did I.
That's beautiful.
It's just magic. Douglas Adams, dialogue is magic. And of course, I have to do this bit. Between Chris Parsons and the doctor, Chris Parsons says, and I don't believe that we traveled hundreds of light years. The doctor replies, why not? Chris says, you cannot travel faster than light. Einstein. The doctor says, what? Do you understand Einstein? Chris says, yes. What? In quantum theory? Yes. What? And Planck? Yes. What? And Newton? Yes. What? And Schoenberg? Of course. The Doctor replies, "You've got a lot to unlearn."
Wonderful.
Magic.
Absolutely.
Loved it. Just so many great lines, such a witty script, even if it's not one of Douglas's favorites. Still a lot of fun, I think. So what's everybody's rating? Dave, we'll start with you first. What's your rating, sir?
Oh, I give it 9.5 little balls of hatred.
Nice.
Cool. Nice.
Very nice. So you really like this one. That's great.
It's one of my favorites.
All right, Jesse.
I watch it all the time.
All right, so as we turn to the Russian judge, Jesse.
Yes, I'm not giving it that low of a grade, but yes, I like this one, and I give it 8 out of 10 TARDIS milk.
Ooh, cute. All right.
Lovely.
So TARDIS milk bottles, shall we say?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. As for me, on a similar note, I'm going to give this one. I liked it a little bit more than you, Jesse. I liked it 8.5 out of 10 cups of tea without milk or sugar.
Nice.
So
very good.
In honor, of course, of Professor Chronotis. So I respect his tea game, especially having biscuits there and also
crackers and jam.
Crackers, yes. So top marks, Professor. I appreciate that. Reverse the polarity. We kind of teased this already a little bit earlier, but if you like Shada, definitely recommend the pilot, which we talked about just here a couple episodes ago. So I'm not going to go into big detail on this one. But this was, of course, the first episode of Series 10 in 2017, written by Stephen Moffat, where we start off the episode, I'll just hit this really quickly. The 12th Doctor and Nardo living under the guises of St. Luke's University professor and his assistant. And so we have a university professor. And, of course, Bill Potts, who works at the university's canteen, is called to the doctor's office, which is empty, and she's left to her thoughts. Bill looks around the room with nothing but the sound of ticking clocks to keep her company, and she notices a TARDIS in the corner of the room with an out-of-order sign hanging on it. So it's obviously a direct nod to Shada.
I think so.
So if you love a Doctor Who story that's set on a college campus in a lot of ways, I definitely recommend checking out the pilot. It's such a great story. Introduces Bill as a companion, just a wonderful script, and just great character interaction between Peter Capaldi and what's her name? I'm blanking on Pearl Mackie as Bill Potts. So highly recommend that. Check that out. And then if you're so inclined, check out our commentary that we just did a couple episodes ago. So please
do.
All right. So listener feedback. We only have one because, hey, Dave's here.
That's right.
So, Dave, you kind of took yourself out of that particular running, but thankfully Holly's got us covered, as always, because she's a loyal listener of Next Stop Everywhere. We always appreciate her. So Holly writes in, "Hey, Charles, Jesse, and Dave. Shada, what can I say? An enjoyable story that has had multiple versions over the years. Professor Chronotis is just as bad as the Doctor with taking things from Gallifrey without permission. Kindred souls. The animation of the missing scenes was nicely done. I love the logic scene that the Doctor has with the computer asking Skagra's ship. Leave it to the Time Lords to build a prison ship and then keep it buried and hidden. Out of the stories that Douglas Adams has done for Doctor Who, this is right up there, but I also enjoy City of Death as well. Any classic fan loves City of Death. That's a great script. Great story. I also recommend the novel called Doctor Who and the Cricket Men that James Goss helped touch up, finish complete. And she mentions that because it was a script that Douglas Adams had also written, but it was never produced. And unfortunately, because of Douglas Adams dying, it was never novelized. So they got a hold of it, and James Goss essentially wrote a novel based on Adams' story. So that's something maybe at some point we need to talk about here on Next Stop Everywhere. I think it's a kind of a lost Doctor Who story from the Tom Baker era.
That would be good.
So, but she says, I'll wrap it up here, Holly from Wisconsin. So thank you, Holly. Always love hearing from you, and always love hearing from Dave when he writes in. So if you want to be like Holly and occasionally Dave, write to us at nextstopeverywheresmg@gmail.com. That's Next Stop Everywhere SMG for Southgate Media Group at gmail.com, or you can reach out to us on Twitter at Next Stop SMG on Twitter, or Facebook, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, or Instagram at Next Stop Everywhere podcast. And if you happen to follow that Instagram, you'll notice that I just posted a picture of my ever-growing Doctor Who action figure collection, which is now gotten so bad I have no room in the TARDIS place that all the figures are stacked up in. So so much for bigger on the inside, as far as I'm concerned. So everybody, hope you check that out. Hope you like us, follow us on the interwebs. And Dave, if people are inclined to check you out on the internet machine, where can they find you?
I'm kind of incognito. I don't really have anything out there. I do have some of those, but it's just David K. Proctor, just my name.
Okay. All right. So if people want to follow you on Facebook, could they do that, or?
Probably so, but they would be bored. My job doesn't let me post a lot, so I don't.
I understand.
But I do have.
At least
Twitter,
you're honest about it.
I'm more of a lurker.
That's all right. That's cool. Jesse, how about you? Where can they reach you?
Well, you can find me on the internet at Jesse Jackson DFW. You can find me on Facebook, Jesse Jackson, though I'm not on there much and I'm never on Instagram, but I do have an account. You can hear me. Charles and I just wrapped up the CW show Stargirl on the Phantom Zone podcast. We are now kind of talking about what we want to do next, if we're going to take a break, are we going to find something else to talk about? But Charles and I are recording coming up on Set Lusting Bruce, the Bruce Springsteen podcast that I do. Charles is joining me in a very special kind of Doctor Who TARDIS crossover, and we're recording an episode this Sunday, which I am really looking forward to discussing. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to pick, if we had the TARDIS, what 5 shows, musicals, rock shows would we attend in the past? Concerts, yes. And so, and I really am looking forward to seeing Charles' picks. It is the 5th anniversary of Set Lusting Bruce, and I have a lot of fun things discussing. And Charles,
yes,
I want to tell you, you're about to mention one of the podcasts you do, and I am loving the X-Files rewatch that you are doing. Please tell people how they can hear you do that.
All right. Well, in addition to that, which I'll talk about here in a couple of seconds, you can reach me on the Twitter machine at Charles Skaggs, or Instagram at Charles Skaggs, or Facebook, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio, or my blog of geeky things. Wait for it.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here on Next Stop Everywhere. Your Doctor Who, Torchwood, Sarah Jane Adventures, all kinds of comic book sci-fi, goodness, news of my other podcasts they do for the Southgate Media Group, including Titan Talk, the Titans podcast that I'm doing with DJ Nick, where we're just finishing off the last couple episodes of Doom Patrol that's currently on DC Universe and HBO Max, based on the DC Comics series, and having a great time doing that. And the Phantom Zone podcast that Jesse talked about, where we were just wrapping up. We just wrapped up Stargirl and had a ball talking those episodes. Great series, fun little series. Highly recommended. And we'll be talking more here shortly. And then Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast that I do with Zan Sprouse, whom all of you have heard here on Next Stop Everywhere, where, of course, we talk Twin Peaks, we talk David Lynch. And currently we are doing a 6-episode retrospective of Twin Peaks actors that have appeared on the X-Files. And we just recorded our first episode where we covered the pilot episode of the X-Files because, hey, the X-Files stars David Duchovny, who played a character by the name of Special Agent Denise Bryson on Twin Peaks. So as a result, I thought that was a great place to start. Jesse was kind enough to write in and got to kind of dip his toe into the X-Files for the very first time and seemed to enjoy it quite a bit.
I did, and I already have my feedback in for the second episode.
Exactly, because we're going to be talking Beyond the Sea, which is a great story that takes place early in the X-Files first season with Don S. Davis, who's another Twin Peaks actor playing Scully's father, and great appearance by Brad Dourif, who is a phenomenal actor. You know him from playing Wormtongue in the Lord of the Rings movies, and he's been in, he was in Dune, and he was in Blue Velvet, and
Deadwood.
for Deadwood, just a lot of great other film and movie projects. Great character actor, great creepy actor, and so he's perfect for the X-Files. And so we'll obviously going to be talking a lot about him as well. So I hope everybody checks that out, because we're having a ball and already getting some requests like, hey, you guys kind of need to do an X-Files podcast. In which case I kind of look over at Zan going, you probably need to convince her more than me on that one. So you know where to write to. All right. So everybody, thank you so much for listening. Dave, I hope you had a good time for your first outing. You did a great job, sir.
Absolutely awesome. I loved it.
You did great. We hope you come back.
So how does it feel to be on the other side of the internet, as we, on the production side, as opposed to the letter writing side, the emailing side?
I love it. I was always wondering behind the scenes how you got your ad in. I saw you used your phone.
Yeah.
So that was one of my big questions.
That's my ultra cheap sound effect machine. Yes.
I gotta tell you really quickly. I went back and watched all the ones that were available with this podcast when I first found it, and all those times when I was listening to them and hadn't caught up, it was killing me not to be able to say, "Oh, I loved it," and I'm glad to be caught up, and I'm glad to be part of it finally.
Well, we definitely appreciate you. We definitely consider you part of the Next Stop Everywhere family. We love your letters. We love when you write in, and now we love you for being a special guest companion.
Absolutely.
And,
we want you on the rotation.
And hopefully we haven't scared you off from coming back in the future, because we got to talk some more Doctor Who, my friend. All right. So everybody, thank you so much for listening. Next time on Next Stop Everywhere, it took us a couple weeks, but we're finally getting around for episode 197. We're finally talking the Gunfighters. And we're going to be talking that with John Takis, who hopefully won't be called into work by his manager once again. Fingers crossed. Let John off work. Come on, we need this episode. So we need to talk the gunfight at the OK Corral and William Hartnell and a really bad song, the Ballad of the OK Corral. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And if you've ever seen the Gunfighters, it's kind of not exactly the finest Doctor Who story, but it is a fun story to talk about. And that's, I think, what we're going to be doing next time. Jesse, any final thoughts before we sign off?
No, I want to echo how great it was to have Mr. David K. Proctor join us.
Yes.
He delivered, and I hope he joins us again. And Charles, as always, this is a blast, and I'm looking forward to next week's episode. We haven't watched a lot of the First Doctor, so I'm kind of looking forward to going all the way back in the TARDIS and seeing an early round with the First Doctor.
Yeah, so to paraphrase Matt Smith, we're going way back, way back,
yes.
All the way back to the Gunfighters. And we'll be doing that with John Takis. So everybody come on back next time, Next Stop Everywhere, number 197. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll see you next time right here. Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.